theyeshiva.net.
Is there a reason for a person to be Meir himself though? He doesn't go, there's no Yom Tovim. He's not eating kabbalas. He's by himself in a house. There's no chiyuv of him to be Meir himself. He can stay tummy. Whatever he eats, he's tummy anyway. It doesn't make a difference if it becomes a sheni or a shlish.
A person could stay tummy, but Pesach you have to bring a carbon Pesach, so you have to be tahor. Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, you have to go to the Beis HaMikdash. A regular Yisrael could be tummy. There's no Isra. He can eat Talmudic food. He could be Tomei. He could be Metame himself. He could touch a mace. Yeah. As long as he knows he's Tomei, he's Tomei. Yeah. There's no prohibition. A Kohen is not allowed to become Tomei mace. And a Kohen has to go to the Beis HaMikdash more often. And he's going to have to stay there a few weeks.
Right, so just for what he does, he has to...
It's a different avoid. But even a Kohen could become Tomei. If he's not going to the Beis HaMikdash, right? But a Kohen is... A kohen is allowed to be tummy. A kohen is not allowed to come in contact with a corpse. That's the tummy is not allowed. If a kohen wants to touch a dead sheretz, I don't think he should, but if he wants to, it's not a prohibition. But it's a problem, because a kohen lived from Terumah. They lived from Terumah. They didn't have revenue. They had Terumah, they had maestros.
Oh, just to exist, he has to...
So, and Terumah has to be tired. And Karbonis, he has to be tired. He goes to Samir, he has to be tired. So for a kohen, it was just a much higher degree, because that was his life revolved around Kedusha, around Tara. A regular person, he could wait till Pesach and then become Torah. It's fine. Unless he has to bring a carbon. I mean, if he's, a Zava, a woman who gives birth, a Mitzayra, whatever, but he has to bring a carbon. But even that he could, there's certain times. Yeah. But there was a concept of many Yisraelim who were very nizer in Tumah. They were called Oichlei Chulin Betara. Meaning even a regular supper, they were not koyanim, regular, they made sure it's pure. These were called chaverim, Jews who were very meticulous. And the reason is, like we explained in those shiurim, that it's not about if you're allowed or you're not allowed to, it's a sensitivity to a deeper way of living, more alignment between the physical and the spiritual.
So they felt it.
They felt it, or they had some intuition of it, or some awareness of it, or some faith of it. I mean, I'm sure different people on different levels. I'm sure some people feel it, some people don't feel it. Like, everything's spiritual. But the point is that they really wanted to live that life. So it was, the challenge was, in Maseches Chagiga, this is a whole long sugya about Amei Haaretz. Amei Haaretz were Jews. Tumah and Tara is a lifestyle. And, we learn about it more academically, right? But Tumah and Tara is really a lifestyle. And you have to be trained in it. You really have to be trained in it. Because it's not like a ritual once a day. It's a lifestyle. It's 24-hour lifestyle. It's like you go into a certain, people who have, vegans or vegetarians or meditators, right? It's a lifestyle. It's
somebody who becomes fun.
Yeah, good example. A Baal Tshuva, right? It's not just you put on tefillin once or you eat matzah on Pesach. It's a complete transformation. Yeah, but you lived it, and you always have to update, and you have to make sure you know the information and all that. But it's a lifestyle, and there were many Amei Haaretz who were fine Jews, but it was just too much, and they didn't know, they were unscrupulous, because it's a lifestyle. They weren't ready for it, and because of that, the Chachamim were always afraid that there's Tumah. That's why there were many decrees connected with Amei Haaretz and so forth, because the reality of it was that they were not so aware, and therefore not so scrupulous about it. So that was a major issue during the time.
They were lower than anybody else.
No.
There's nothing wrong with what they did.
No.
I always pictured Amei Haaretz like something's like, it's not wrong.
No. Well, it's wrong if they're unaware of it. They may not know that they're doing something wrong. If they're unaware.
It doesn't matter. Because
Well,
it doesn't make a difference.
right, but it matters to the kohen who's having contact with them, who's eating their food, who's going to their house. You know what I mean? If I'm a kohen and I go visit your house, and I sit down on the couch,
He has to worry that...
or I'm staying by you for Shabbos, and I lay down on your bed, but that bed happened to become tameh from a nida. Right? I'm just giving an example. So I sit down on your couch, I lay down on your mattress, right? That may be a source of tumah. It's called mishkav, a moishav, of a zav or a zav. And just to give one example, that mattress had to go to the mikveh. It didn't, right? Now it affects Tumah. I'm just giving you an example. So now they have to know which home am I going into, what's going on in this house. So these were just all these sensitivities that Jewish life revolved around in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, when Tumah and Tahara was literally part of daily life. That's why there's so many mikvahs, in all the excavations around Israel. You see all these interesting mikvahs, especially on the way to the Beis HaMikdash when they were traveling. This was a very common thing. Besides the mikvahs, of course, of the women with Nida, but there were also all the mikvahs for Tahara, for men and women, going to the Beis HaMikdash and so forth.
But actually, you can look at it in the socioeconomic principle, so to determine what one can eat, what he cannot eat, when you can go to Beis HaMikdash, when you cannot go to Beis HaMikdash. You can make it very economical, just business-oriented. This is, I cannot, I can. So, but you can make it also spiritual.
You're right.
Like everything else, there's spiritual level.
Yeah.
Socioeconomics.
Yeah. I'm sure for some people, Tumah and Tahara just became another part of the institutionalized socio-economical system. Like everything, it can become very, stripped from inner layers, and it's just, this is how it works. This is just...
There was no public, like we have today, Parshas, publications you can read, and there's no...
But there were teachers. There were always teachers. That's how we survived. They're teachers, always teachers.
I always think, the Parshas to us, this ABC, and always asking them,
Right, but the Baal Tshuva who grew up not on kosher and starts living a kosher lifestyle, it's a very powerful transformation. You can ask anybody who went through it. And your mother tells you you're nuts. Your brother tells you you're destroying the family. And the first Thanksgiving dinner, when you're not eating turkey, because it's treif, right? With, the cranberry sauce. Yeah? Hell breaks loose in the family. Not by everybody, but it's not a simple thing. It's a big Mesiras Nefesh. Huh?
And every chasana.
Yeah, every chasana and every reception and the Sunday afternoon barbecue and the poolside birthday party for grandpa. Right? You're coming with your tuna sandwiches.
Roughly comes sometimes very slowly from home, all of a sudden I can't eat this.
Yeah.
My son won't eat in my house from not following straws.
So let's come home all of a sudden.
I know. We buy following straws.
Okay. Listen, if your son has to rebel against you, trust me,
That's the good way.
pray that the rebellion should go that way rather than the other way. Okay? It's a big blessing. In 2019, your son says, only Chalav Yisrael. Thank God. May all fathers have that frustration with nachas. Too much Chalav Yisrael. Okay. We move on now. We're up to Daf Tesvav Amud Aleph, literally the second line from the top, Amar Rish Lakish. Tesvav Amud Aleph, the second line from the top, Amar Rish Lakish. As always, it's important to tune in. It can get somewhat complex, but I think if you tune in, you'll be able to understand everything. Be'ezer Hashem, at least according to our ability, obviously. Let's go back to see the Mishnah inside, because we're going to be analyzing the words of the Mishnah. Amar Reb Meir, in the middle of the Mishnah. After we quoted the testimony of Reb Chanina's Gan HaKoyanim and Rabbi Akiva, and hopefully by now you remember the testimony of Reb Chanina and Reb Akiva, I will not repeat it. Amar Reb Meir, the Mishnah says, Reb Meir said, I'm reading inside, in the Mishnah, Yudalad Amar Aleph, Midivreim labmadnu shesorfen truma Torah matmeya bepesach. From their words we learn that you're allowed to burn impure truma with pure truma, Erev Pesach, when you have to burn chametz, when both pieces of truma are chametzdik, even though it's being contaminated in the fire when it comes in contact with other truma. Amar Reb Yosi said, Eina hi ha-mida. Eina hi ha-mida means, it's not the case. Literally, the words "Eina hi amida" means you cannot learn this. It's not a right midah. It's not. You cannot learn this from their words. It's a wrong comparison. And Rabbi Yossi continues. In other words, he disagrees with Reb Meir. You're not allowed to burn pure truma together with impure truma erev Pesach. You're not allowed to make a separate fire. Do not bring them together in the same fire. Umaydim Rebbe Lezer Rebbe Yeshua. And then the Mishnah continues. Rebbe Lezer and Rebbe Yeshua are Umaydim. Now remember, Rebbe Lezer and Rebbe Yeshua's name were not mentioned. They were completely not mentioned yet. It's the first time. But Rebbe Lezer and Rebbe Yeshua are Umaydim. What are they Umaydim? They're Umaydim Shesarfen Zula Atzma V'Zula Atzma. That you have to burn each Terumah independently. So Rabbi Yossi says, I disagree with you, Rabbi Meir, and Rabbi Lezer disagrees with you, and Rabbi Yeshua disagrees with you. Everybody holds that what? That you burn the two Terumahs separate. And what does he mean by the word umaydim? Umaydim means even though they argue about something, as he will say what they argue about. They argue, as he says right afterwards, al ma nechleku, al hatluya v'al hatmeya. Rabbi Lezer Eimet is sort of zulatzma v'zulatzma, Rabbi Yeshua Eimet shtein kachas. They're arguing about truma that is tluya. Tluya means it's a suffix tuma. We're not sure if it's tameh. And truma that is certainly tameh. Rabbi Lezer says burn them separately. Rabbi Yeshua says burn them together in one fire. Even though one of those pieces of truma is tluya, meaning it's in limbo. We're not sure if it's tahir or tameh. Here there's an argument. But in a case where it's mamish tahir, everyone agrees, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua agree that you're not allowed to burn them together. In other words, even Rabbi Yeshua, who says that if the truma is in doubt, you're not sure if it's tameh or tahir, you could burn it together with the tameh de truma, even though you're making it for sure tameh, because it was anyway a doubt that it was tameh. He too would agree that in this case, where it's mamish tahir, you cannot burn it with tameh de truma, and that's Rabbi Yossi completely disagrees with Rabbi Meir. It has to be eaten, but you have no choice. It's Erev Pesach. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. What are you supposed to do? You're not allowed to eat chametz anymore. So you have to burn the truma. Before, but if you didn't, for whatever reason, it's, nobody can eat it. There was no. So now you have truma and it's chametz, and Pesach is coming. You're not allowed to have chametz. It's bread. You're not allowed to have it. Even if it's holy bread, but it's still chametz. On Pesach, you're not allowed to have it. The question was, what did Reb Meir mean when he said, Midivreim lamadnu? From their words we learned. So first the Gemara brought the natural idea that he was learning it from the words of Reb Chanina's Gana Kohanim and Rabbi Akiva. From them he was learning that you're allowed to burn Truma Tahira with Truma Tmeya on Pesach. And the Gemara is struggling to see how he learned it from them because their cases are very different. In their cases, the meat was Tameh already, or the oil was Tameh already, or Pasul. How can you compare it to this case? The Gemara at the end says that it has to be that Reb Meir believed Reb Chanina was talking about meat of a carbon that was tamei only midirabanan, not min hatayra. And he says you're allowed to bump it up when you burn it, which would be very similar to chametz Erev Pesach in the beginning of the 6th hour, which is only forbidden rabbinically and not biblically. And nonetheless, he says that you're allowed to make it tamei when you burn it in the fire. But now we come to a whole different explanation of how we learn Reb Meir's proof that you're allowed to burn the two trumas together Erev Pesach. Amar Rish Lakish Mishum Bar Kapara. Rish Lakish said in the name of Bar Kapara. Masnis in our Mishnah is talking about Ba'av HaTumah D'Oraisa Uvlad HaTumah D'Oraisa. Our Mishnah is addressing burning meat that became tameh with an av hatumah that was biblical, together with meat that became tameh from an vlad hatumah, from a derivative of tumah biblically. Unlike the previous explanation, that the meat that was a shlishi was only rabbinically tameh, which would obviously be a difficult interpretation in the Mishnah, to say that the two meats didn't have the same tumah. The first meat had a tumah that was biblical. The second meat had a tumah that was only rabbinic. That's how we learned it. Rabbi Shlakish says no. There's no need for this. When Reb Chanina said that you burned two meats that were tameh, he means both of them were tameh biblically. That's a much smoother way of learning the Mishnah. In other words, the first piece of meat was a rishon. The second piece of meat was a shlishi. First piece of meat touched on av hatumah, let's say a dead sheret, so it's a rishon. The second piece of meat of the carbon is a shlishi, and it's also tameh min hatayra. An example would be a tvul yoim touched it. Somebody who went to the mikveh touches this carbon. He's like a sheni. This meat is a shlishi. Now I have to burn both of them. So Chanina said they burnt them together in the same fire, even though in the fire the shlishi became a sheni because it touched the meat that was a rishon. So its tumah level accelerated. It was bumped up. Reb Chanina said that's fine. But how would Reb Meir learn his halacha from that? Reb Meir says you're allowed to take pure truma that is not tamei at all, and mamish make it tamei. Ah, it's tamei already. Excellent. That was our problem, which is why we were forced to change the scenario of Reb Chanina and say that it was only tamei midrabbanan. So he says, no, really, it's all derais. Oh, my midivreim. What does Reb Meir mean midivreim lamadnu? He can't mean from Reb Chanina and Reb Akiva, because they allowed only to add tumah. Something that already min haTorah was not edible. You weren't allowed to eat it. It was tamei. They said you're allowed to add tumah. How could you learn from this to take truma tahira that is edible, even though you're not allowed to eat it, but it is edible. It's not tamei. How could you learn from it? How could you learn from it that you're allowed to burn truma tahira? And when are you allowed to burn it? In the beginning of the 6th hour, when biblically, it's not only is it not tamei, it's also edible. In the beginning of the 6th hour, it's not tamei, but it's not edible rabbinically, but biblically it's also edible. So how could you learn Reb Chanina and Reb Akiva? How could you see them as a source for Reb Meir's teaching? It wouldn't make sense. They're talking about a case where the meat was tamei, and the meat was unedible biblically. So you could say, okay, burn it and make it tamei. Here, min haTorah, you're allowed to actually eat the truma. And you're telling me you're allowed to mamish make it tamei. So even if you want to say that something that's not edible, you're allowed to make tamei. You know why? Because you anyway can't eat it. So if you anyway can't eat it, I don't care if you make it tamei. Because perhaps the reason that the Torah doesn't want you to make it tamei is so that you should eat it. But if you anyway can't eat it, who cares? Zolzain, let's say it's a very good vart. But in this case, the truma is edible. It's Erev Pesach, 11 o'clock. Biblically, it's edible. You have another hour. Eat it. Nonetheless, you're telling me, not only don't you eat it, because rabbinically you're not allowed to eat it, you're allowed to make it tamei. You can't prove it from them. What does midivreim mean? It means something else. What he meant was midivrei Rebbe Lezer v'Rebbe Yeshua. Midivreim doesn't mean midivreim from their words. Midivreim is a generic term from the words of the sages. There's an expression you'll have in Gemara, midivrei soifrim lamadnu, from the words of the sages. Midivreim means from their words, not those two people. From their words means from the words of the sages we have learned that you're allowed to burn truma tahirim, truma tmeya. That's what he means. It's a new inyan. It's not a continuation to the previous part of the Mishnah. It's a new inyan. That from the words of the Chachamim, who happened to be Rebbe Lezer and Rebbe Yeshua, we learned this halacha. Well, here the issue is not meat and milk. Here the issue is that you're not allowed to make regular truma tamei. The Torah says that Vani hine nasati lach es mishmeres trumoisai. In Parshas Korach, Shem tells Aaron, I have given you the mitzvah to protect my truma. Protecting it means to keeping it pure, that you should be able to eat it. And here, when you're burning the chametz Erev Pesach, you're making it impure. You're taking a pure piece of challah that a kohen could eat, you're throwing it in a fire, it's going to come in contact with an impure piece of challah, right? A truma, let's say, that touched a mace, and as a result of that, you're making it tamei. So the question is, how do I know I'm allowed to do it? You'll say, well, you're anyway burning it, and it's inedible, and you're not allowed to eat it, and it's Erev Pesach, and it's fine. Okay, maybe you're right, but maybe you're wrong. I can't learn it from Reb Chanina and Reb Akiva. They're talking about a different scenario. Understand? But you're allowed to be metama, meat and milk. It's not a problem. Here we're talking about truma.
Right, no, I understand. It's not the same parallel, but this concept, like when you're burning it, right, you're burning it for what purpose?
To destroy it.
Right. So the same thing, you're throwing away milk.
Right, you're right. But before it gets destroyed for 3 minutes, it's going to become tamei. Am I allowed to do that?
Right.
I need a source for it. You could say, be practical. It's going to get burnt. Who cares if it gets tamei? It's not like staying in your closet and people are going to eat it.
Right. So I guess I'm taking a raya then.
Right, you're saying a very rational vart. But when there's a mitzvah, you have to know if you can say that. Maybe the mitzvah is, truma is sacred. And as long as it's sacred, you're not allowed to do anything to make it not sacred. If it's supposed to get burnt, it'll get burnt. But when it gets burnt, it goes up to heaven. That's none of your business. But till that point, you have to keep it sacred.
But we know we have a certain like pig with a certain time.
Yeah, if you have noiser, if you have a carbon level, you have to burn it. No, here also you have to burn it. It's chametz. You have to burn it. It's not a question you have to burn the truma. The question is, in the process of burning, can I make it tameh?
You have no choice.
Of course, I can make a separate fire. Why do I have to throw it into this fire right here? Make a big fire, put it on this side, put it on the left side, or make a separate fire. What do you have to make it? He made a little small fire, right, in his garbage can. I know. That's what Rabbi Yossi says. He agrees. But Rabbi Meir is proving it. So from where do you prove it? Rabbi Chanina, not a good proof. Rabbi Akiva, not a good proof. So the Gemara now says, Rish Lakish, the name of Kabarna, he doesn't mean Medivrei hem. Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Akiva, Medivrei he means from the words of the sages. From Divrei Chachamim. From the words of the sages, I have learned this. In other words, and this is a Chiddush, when the Mishnah brought here Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Akiva, it didn't really belong to this Mishnah, because it's not an introduction to Rabbi Meir. So why does the Gemara bring it here? Why does the Mishnah bring it here? Mamish derech hagav. Since we're talking about burning Terumah Tahira and Terumah Tmeya, the Mishnah also introduces other cases where two things got burned together throughout the year. According to the first interpretation, Reb Chanina and Reb Akiva was an introduction to Pesachim. According to this new interpretation, Reb Chanina and Reb Akiva are just brought here derech hagav because we're talking about the concept of burning Tameh with Tahir. The real practical question is, do I have to go to my neighbor, and ask him for wood, and he says, it's going to cost you 6 ruble, and I have to pay 6 ruble and buy another log and make another fire? That's the practical question. No, I have a fire for the tahir. Now I have tameh. Can I throw it in? You say, no, make another fire. Or maybe no, just put it there.
It's going to burn. It's going to make it pure. It's going to be pure.
Spiritual truth is not dependent on time. You know, you say it's going to be tameh for 2 minutes. So what? Maybe making it tameh for 2 minutes is a devastating reality. But it's getting burnt. You're right. So you could say it's getting burnt, so it's like non-existent. Okay, that's a perspective. But there's perhaps another perspective. Huh?
It's like the bar katala. It's going to die anyway.
The bar katala, yeah. So Reb Meir's point is that you're allowed to, but what's his source? Right. So therefore you don't have to buy another log. Right. Okay, so we'll see. So Reb Meir learned it from where? Rish Lakish said the name of Midivreihem, from the sages. Which sages? Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Now the Gemara has to scan through Shas and say, where did Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua say anything that would be a source for this? Now, just appreciate that the Gemara is going to have an answer to this. Okay? Well, how are you supposed to address this? From the sages we learned this. Which sages? Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yeshua. Where? What? When? So now the Gemara thinks, the Gemara doesn't say this, but it scans through every time Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua said anything. Literally, Google, and then looks for anything that you could use as a reference, as a prototype for this halacha. Says, hey, Rabbi Yeshua. Which Rabbi Yeshua? Where's the Rabbi Yeshua? Where? Oh, perhaps I have one. The Tanat, I have a Mishnah in Maseches Trumos, chapter 8. Chavis shel Truma shenoilad lasafik tuma. You have a chavis is a barrel. Is that how they translate it?
Cask.
A what?
Cask.
Cask, okay. A cask is like a barrel, no? It's a smaller barrel. Yeah. It's truma, which means it's sacred food, and there's a suffix tumah that's born. A doubt of tumah was born, meaning a person who's tumah, that's somebody who touched a corpse. So he's really tumah. He walks into the room where the barrel is. Yeah. He may have tripped over it, or he may have touched it. He may have not. Yeah. It's sitting on the couch. Right? Or it's sitting near the couch. He sat on the couch for an hour. He was reading, drinking a cup of tea. He may have touched it. He may have not touched the truma. I don't know. Yeah. Or it could be a situation. That's how Rashi puts it. Tosfos puts a situation. He says that basically perhaps he there's a case where there were two barrels. and he touched one of them, but you don't know which one he touched. So on each one, you have a suffix tumah. Okay, so now what happens? Rabbi Lezer says, Im if this barrel of truma was in an open place, meaning it was not protected, you should put it away somewhere, but makam hamutzna, you should hide it. If it was exposed, if it was open, anybody can touch it, yichasena. Make sure you put a lid on it so that nobody should touch it. In other words, even though it may already be tameh, but you have to protect it further, that it should not become tameh. It's already tameh, who cares? You're not sure. It's 50%. Rabbi Yeshua says no. If it was in a hidden place, if you want, you could place it in an exposed place. If it was covered by a lid, yigalena. If you want, you can expose it. Why? He holds because it's a suffix tumah, you have no biblical obligation to protect it, and you can even allow tumah to contact it. In other words, your obligation is gone. It's a very interesting machlokes. Rabbi Yeshua says, I don't care if you protect it, I don't mind. But you don't have to be conscientious. If you need the lid, you could take the lid. You could keep it in an open place. People are walking around there. Somebody may be tameh. Okay, so they're tameh. You're causing it. You're not protecting it. That's fine because it's a suffix tumah. What's this machlokes based on? Fascinating idea. Rashi says the machlokes is based on the following. We learned that pasuk in Kairach. We looked at it inside. Vani hine nasati lecha es mishmeres trumoisoi. I told you and I have given you the protection of my trumois. Trumoisoi. Okay? Trumoisoi. But remember, in a Sefer Torah, there's no nekudos. There's literally no nekudos. So when you read it, it can be read trumasi, because there's no vav at the end. Trumasi means my truma. Trumoisoi means my trumois in the plural. Now, if it would have said with a vav trumoisoi, you couldn't read trumasi, mem saf yud. But since it says, let me show it to you. It'll be easier. You mind, yeah? Just if you have a chumash, we have chumashim, yeah. Thank you very much. When you get the blue chumash, it's page 433. Page 433. Okay. Parshas Kairach. Page 43, it's Numbers chapter 18, verse 8. Just to look at these words. Vayedaber Hashem al Aaron, vani hine nasati leches mishmeres trumoisoi. But look how it's spelled. Taf, Reish, Vav, Mem, Saf, Yud. You see? We know that you have to pronounce it trumoisoi, which is plural. But let's say there wouldn't be vowels. Let's say there wouldn't be nekudus. I can read it trumasi, my truma, because there's no vav at the end. That vav is being swallowed up by the cholam. Trumoisoi. You don't need a vav. It works, but the missing vav means that the Torah wants you to be able to read it as trumasi. Now here's an important idea in Torah Shabbal Peh. Whenever you pronounce a word a particular way, but it lends itself to be pronounced another way, that's significant. Okay? You heard what I said? The fact that it was written in a way that it could be pronounced in a different way rather than the way it's pronounced, there is a lesson for it. So Rabbi Yeshua, there's an argument between Tanaim, yesh aim lemasayris or yesh aim lemikra. What do we give more prominence to? The way it's written or the way it's pronounced? Rabbi Eliezer holds you give prominence to the way it's pronounced. Rabbi Yeshua says you give prominence to the way it's written. And therefore he says, Trumasi, you have to guard Trumaisoi. But it's written Trumasi. And therefore he says you only have to guard one truma, not two trumas. Which truma don't you have to guard? Rebbe Eliezer says you have to guard two trumas. Which? Tumah you don't have to guard. It's nothing to guard. It's done. It's tameh. So which do you have to guard? Two. Tahar and suffix tahar. Rabbi Yeshua says you only have to guard one truma. Tahar. If it's suffix tahar, you don't have to guard it anymore. And therefore I don't care what you do. You want to keep it open, keep it open. You want to expose it, expose it. I don't even care if you take it out from a hidden room, from a safe, and you put it out in the open. I don't care. The chiyuv to watch it is gone because it's a suffix tumah. That's what Rabbi Yeshua holds. That's a Mishnah Masechta Trumas. What do we see from here? Rabbi Yeshua is teaching us that Terumah, that's a suffix Tumah, even though it's not for sure Tameh, you're allowed to cause it to be Tameh. You're allowed to cause it to be Tameh. Why? His logic would be because you can't eat it anyway. You're not allowed to eat this Terumah because it's a suffix Tumah. You're not allowed to eat it. Because you're not allowed to eat it, therefore, I don't care if it becomes Tameh. Because apparently the logic is, if it's not edible, there's no point to protect it. You protect it to do the mitzvah, but you anyway can't do the mitzvah because it's a suffix tumah and it's a suffix d'oraisa. So you're not allowed to eat it. A kohen is not allowed to eat this truma if it's a suffix tumah. So I don't care if it becomes tameh. It's irrelevant. If so, what can we infer from this? That if you have truma erev Pesach and you can't eat it, I don't care if it gets tameh. Rabbi Yeshua does the same thing. He says that if it's truma that you could eat essentially, but it's a suffix tumah, I don't care if it becomes tameh. You're allowed to do it. So you hear the same thing. I can't eat it. It's not a suffix tumah, it's tar, but I can't eat it because it's erev Pesach. So if I can't eat it, so therefore I could be at metameh. This is how the Gemara wants to say. Perhaps this is what Rabbi Meir meant, and this is what he means. He learned from Rabbi Yeshua that you're allowed to be metameh this truma. No, but they can't. Nobody could. Nobody could. Yeah. It's left to decay, yeah. You're right, but it's a suffix minatayra, so you're not allowed to eat it. So the Gemara says, mi dami. Right, you're asking, minatayra it's edible, where this truma is not edible because it's a suffix tumah. So you're saying, by the barrel of truma, min hatayra you're not allowed to eat it because it's a suffix tumah. You're right, it's a very good order. But apparently the way the Gemara understands Reb Meir is that it's not you're not allowed to eat it because it's for sure tameh. It's a suffix. And therefore you have to be machmer. So therefore, because it's a suffix, you can't say, mamish, that this object is be'etzem tameh. In other words, it may be completely fine. It's just you are in doubt. You understand the difference? Because it's a suffix, it may be that this object is perfect, but I don't know. So it's a din on me that I'm not allowed to. So he wants to say the same thing. True, chametz 11 o'clock in the morning, you're allowed to eat minat Torah, but I'm not allowed to eat it. Because the rabbis told me I'm not allowed to eat it, and I'm mechuyev to follow the rabbis. So that's his comparison between a suffix tumah and truma that you have to burn midrabanan, and you're not allowed to eat midrabanan. Right. Just like this, I can't say it's tameh. Maybe it is, but maybe it's not. So why can I make it tameh? The answer is because I can't eat it. For me, it's off limits. Same is true with chametz. That's the comparison that he's trying to make. Right. Atazoi. Rabbi Yeshua holds yesh aim lemasayris. Prominence must be given to the way it's written, not the way it's pronounced. And therefore you focus on trumasi. Trumasi means only one truma has to be protected. Which one? The one that's certainly pure. If it's a suffix, you don't have to protect it on the suffix. Yeah, Masayris, yesh aim lemasayris means there's prominence to the way the tradition was given of writing the Sefer Torah. Mikra is the way you read it, you pronounce it. Masayris is the way it was written, the tradition of writing. It was written this way. Rabbi Yeshua says this must be the focus. Yeah. An example for this is, there's a machlokes in Maseches Sukkah Davav, how many walls a sukkah has to have. So Shimon and the Chachamim. He holds it needs 3 full walls and a little bit of a fourth. The Chachamim and the Halacha hold 2 full walls and part of a third, and that's the Halacha. What's the machlokes? It says Besukos 3 times, but once is without a vav. You read it Besukos, but you can read it, but when it's written, it's Besukas. So the Chachamim say, look how it's pronounced. Besukos. Sukos is plural. Sukas is singular. So Reb Shimon gives us another wall. They say, no. Reb Shimon says, so if you say Besukos, it's another wall, because that's how it's pronounced. If you look how it's written, Besukas, so it's missing a wall. I'm just giving another example where this has very practical ramifications. So we're using this Rabbi Yeshua as a source that you could burn Terumah Tahira with Terumah Tmeya. Says the Gemara, mi dami, no good. Hasim grama ba'alma hacha biyadayim. Rabbi Yeshua never says you're allowed to take the Terumah and make it tummy with your hands. He says you're allowed to leave it, and if it becomes tummy, it becomes tummy. Let's say you're right. You're allowed to leave it open and not protect it. But that's very different than taking it and physically bringing it close to tumah and making it tummy with your hand. That's a different level. Maybe you're right, but don't prove it from Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua just says you're allowed to expose it. You're allowed to leave it unopened. You're allowed to take off the lid. I don't care. I don't have to guard it. But to come and say that you're allowed to mamish with your own hands, not grama. Grama means indirect. You're a cause. But be a dayim with your hands, that's already an extra step, and you need a source for that. It can happen, but there's a difference between grama and yadayim. It's just an extra step. Right, I understand. You're saying the Torah says shmira, and once you take away shmira, who cares? Whether you're not shomer because you just leave it around, or you're not shomer because you're matame it. Right?
Maybe you could say because you might come to eat it.
Huh?
It's not protected. You could say you might come to eat it. That's the reason why he says, not because you're allowed to...
No, we're saying protecting it from tumah. So once you say there's no need to protect, no, if you have to protect it, then you have to protect it even indirectly. And if you don't have to protect it, then you have to protect it. Then even directly, I don't care. You could say that svara, right? You could say that svara, but you can argue that there would still be a prohibition, maybe rabbinically, to actually be metame the truma. That's like it's a radical thing to do. So maybe he's right, but Rabbi Meir can't infer that from Rabbi Yeshua, because Rabbi Yeshua could have said something much more in the Mishnah. Why didn't Rabbi Yeshua say? Rabbi Yeshua said, if it's in a closed place, put it in an open place. If it was covered, reveal it. Why didn't he say much more? Make it tummy. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say that. And I would tell you there's an advantage to do that. You know why? Because then you could just get rid of it. You could burn it. He doesn't say those words. He says if it was covered, you could take off the cover. Why doesn't he go more an extreme? Perhaps Rabbi Yeshua believes that even if you don't have to protect it, you're still not allowed to be at metame biyadayim. Maybe rabbinically. But we see that he doesn't go to that extreme. Reb Meir is taking it a step further. You can't learn that from Rabbi Yeshua. He says, Midivrayim lamadnu. You see what you were saying? From Rabbi Yeshua itself, we see that the example he gives is a limited application of non-protection. He doesn't go to the extreme of saying, bring tumah to it. Now you could say he was just being practical. In other words, why would somebody want to be at metame? What he was just saying is, I don't care where you leave it. You could say that too, but we're not sure.
There is a practical reason to metame. Why? Because we start with the sofek. So
You be metame and then you'll burn it. Right. Exactly. So that's why there would be a reason for Rabbi Yeshua to say that, if he believed that. But he maybe didn't believe that. Maybe perhaps he felt rabbinically you're not allowed to. In other words, I don't care if you need the lid, take the lid. I don't care if you bring it to this room.
taking the lid, actually taking away the shmir, so that has more chance
To become tameh. Yeah, more chance. For sure, he allows that. That he allows. Abelazar says no. Very good. You're making the point. But he doesn't say to be at metame. So l'cha'ira, you okay, but it's halacha. You got to know. So we rejected this. Elohah Rabbi Yeshua. There's a new Rabbi Yeshua we're going to bring up, and that's the next Mishnah. Actually, Trumas Perik Ches. This first was Mishnah Ches. This is Mishnah Tes. Chavis shel Truma shenishbara begas al yaina. A cask, a barrel of Truma broke in the higher level of the wine press. Ancient wine presses, you have to understand this, ancient wine presses were usually constructed on a multi-layer level. There was the higher level, the lower level. On the higher level, they would actually press the grapes, and the wine would trickle down and flow into the reservoir, which was on the bottom, and that would be either a tube that would contain the wine or just a cistern that was plastered. They had to make sure that the wine is retained and it doesn't seep out. And that was the reservoir where the wine would remain, and that's where it would ferment. Okay? So now understand the situation here. You have a casket of truma, a bunch of grapes, that's truma. I'm a farmer, I have a lot of vines, I took 2% of my grapes, and I gave it to Rabbi Yerucham HaKoyen. Okay? 2% of my grapes, it may be a lot of grapes. Maybe a whole barrel filled with grapes. This is sacred that he can eat or he can make wine out of it, right? He wants wine. He needs wine for Kiddush. So he takes my Terumah and your Terumah and your Terumah, and he has a whole barrel filled of grapes. And he goes up to the wine press, the higher level. Here it's going to be pressed, and the wine will flow down. But there's already wine on the bottom. There's wine in the reservoir, which is regular wine. Okay, it's regular wine. But it's not just regular wine. It's Tamadika wine. It's Tamadika wine. That wine became tummy. Maybe a dead sheretz fell into it. Maybe a nevela fell into it. Maybe somebody who was tummy touched it. That wine in the reservoir was tummy. Okay, so there's a barrel of Terumah grapes upstairs. Not a big deal. The problem is this barrel, I said grapes, I'm sorry, a barrel of wine upstairs, a barrel of wine. And this barrel broke. And now the wine is making its way downward into the reservoir. So let's now analyze the consequences. It goes down into the reservoir. The reservoir wine was tameh, which is fine. I'm a Yisrael, I can eat it, I can drink it, you can drink it. Anybody who is not careful to eat mundane food that is pure can drink that wine, right? Even if you are careful, you won't drink it, but let's say it's a time of your tummy anyway. Let's say your tummy anyway. So it's a great time to use this wine. So you're going to drink this wine, right? And really, even a kohen is allowed to drink this wine, but he's going to become tummy midrabanan. He's going to be a sheni l'tumah, so he may not want to do it. So that's not a problem. This tummy dika wine, I don't care. Wine is allowed to get tummy. Here's the problem. All the Terumah wine is now going to get mixed in. Now everything is going to get ruined for everybody. Why? Because nobody can now enjoy this wine. I'm a Yisrael, I can't drink this wine because it has Terumah inside. Even pure Terumah I'm not allowed to drink. Certainly tummy Terumah I'm not allowed to have. But I can't even give it to a kohen. Why? Because a kohen is not allowed to have Terumah Tamei either. So this whole wine, which may be worth, I don't know, $5,000, is all gone. It's all wasted. So there's a big problem going on now. As this barrel breaks, the alarms, the Talmudic alarms go off. What do? It's flowing down. It's going to take a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes to get there. And once it gets mixed in, it's over. Now, if you have a huge reservoir of wine, there could be bittul. Bittul means if you have a ratio of 1 to 100, where the mundane overpowers the Terumah by a ratio of 1 to 100, so you'll have 100 gallons of chulin, right? With a ratio of 1 gallon of Terumah, you're good, because the Terumah gets nullified, and then it's called chulin. You're fine. Just you take out 1 gallon, you give it to a kohen, and anybody can eat it. This is called the halacha of bittul. But if you have 100 gallons of Terumah coming down, or 1 gallon of Terumah, and you don't have enough to overwhelm it, to be it mavatal, we have a shtickle crisis. What do? Chaviz shel Terumah shenishbru begas al yain. A barrel of Terumah wine that broke in the higher level of the wine press. Right. You can't pour in more afterwards. Ein mevatlan iser lechatchila. V'tachtoina chulin tmei. And on the bottom, you have mundane wine, which is tamei. Moider Rebbe Lezer Rebbe Yeshua. Rebbe Lezer Rebbe Yeshua both concede shem yachal hatzel lemena revi'is betara yatzel. If you can rescue at least a revi'is is a quarter of a lug, between 3.5 ounces and 4.5 ounces, depends how the measurements, but a revi'is is generally called the fourth of a lug, which is a few ounces, between 3.5 and 4.5. If you could find a pure vessel and save a few ounces of that Terumah wine, yatzil, go protect it. The rest of the wine is going to go into the chulin and get tamei. Okay, sorry, but that's what happens. Why? Because you have Terumah here. All the Terumah is going to become tamei. We have a mitzvah to protect our Terumah. What's the minimal amount of protection? A revi'is. Because a drink that's less than a revi'is is not called a drink. Right? When it comes to bracha achrayna, different things. So a revi'is is considered a significant amount of beverage that you should save, you protect. That's like a mitzias of Terumah wine. Just like with food, eating is called a kazayas, drinking it's a revi'is. So if you can at least get 3.5 ounces of that Terumah that you'll be able to save and drink, do it. So if you have to run to your house and get a clean vessel, Get a clean vessel, because all the vessels around there are all tamei, which is why the wine on the bottom became tamei probably, okay? So you could run to your house, come back, and you'll be able to save 3.5 ounces. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yeshua said, do it. All the rest of the wine will trickle down to the tamei d'kechulin and get ruined, and ruin it, and everything is ruined, okay? But at least you saved your 3.5 ounces of truma. But v'imla, 1 second, if you can't find a tahor d'kekeli anywhere, and by the time you run to Shul, or you go to the Avid to go to the store and buy yourself a keli tahor, what's going to happen? All the truma is down in the lower reservoir, in the lower cistern. So now you can't save the truma. There's nothing you can do. Why? The kalim right here, with which you can contain the wine, are all tamei. To go get a tahor d'kekeli, by the time you come back, you're not going to have a revius of truma left. So it's obvious that this truma is going to tumah. There's nothing you can do. It would be nice to protect it, but you can't. Now what do you do? That's obvious that you cannot protect it. Here there's a fascinating machlokes. Rebbe Eliezer Omer, Teirid v'sitamei val yitamena biyad. Let it flow down and become tamei. Do not make it tamei with your hands directly. Meaning, don't take a tamei d'kekeli and make the truma tamei. Let nature take its course. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, af yitamena biyad. You could be it metame with your hand. How? By taking a tamei d'ke vessel and absorbing the truma, even though you are directly making this truma tamei, because you put a tamei d'kekeli in the way of the truma. You are the one who directly caused the contact. You made the truma tamei be a dayim. You violated a mitzvah to be shomer truma. Rebbe Eliezer says, I'm fine with that. I'm sorry. Rabbi Yeshua says, I'm fine. Rebbe Eliezer says, everyone holds if you could save truma with a tahor d'kekeli, you have to. But if you can't, even a revius. But if you can't, Rebbe Eliezer says, don't touch it. Let it take its course. If it becomes tamei, we know it's going to become tamei, but you didn't do it. It's a mistake, it happens. Rabbi Yeshua says at this point, save it. Save your chulin. Let the reservoir remain regular wine. Don't let $5,000 go to the garbage. Don't do that. It's precious wine. You have to be metame truma. You're allowed to be metame truma. I'm fine. That's Rabbi Yeshua's chiddush. What's the logic, huh? At least don't ruin the chulin. At least save the chulin. Obviously, Rabbi Yeshua is concerned for the chulin. Yeah, that would be his concern. If we couldn't care less about the chulin, then there wouldn't be an argument. Truma is farfallen. So Rabbi Yeshua says, since truma is farfallen, since it's already lost, you could be at metame with your hands. Rabbi Eliezer says, no. It's farfallen, but you're not allowed to do anything. It's farfallen, but you can't make a contribution here. What's the logical svara here? What's Rabbi Yeshua's svara? Right, but we see that hefsid mum, when I could save 3.5 ounces of the truma, I don't let you save the $5,000. Okay, remember that. The 3.5 ounces truma, nobody is thinking about finance, even Rabbi Yeshua. When I can't, so what's the vart? Rabbi Yeshua holds a new vart. That truma that's going to be lost, we consider as though it's lost already. Now we come to your svara. You like your bar katala. Yeah. You're on the way to the gallows. I don't mean you. Yeah. The truma is about to be lost. All the chiyuvim are off. So when the Torah says you have to protect it, it means if you have truma to protect. But this is about to be lost. It's about to be tamei. So Yeshua says there's no mitzvah anymore. You could be at metame biyadayim. If you could save the truma, even 3.5 ounces, it's not going to be lost. So you have to lose $5,000 to save the truma. But since it's anyway going to be lost, so Yeshua says the bets are off. There's no mitzvah anymore. Rebbe Eliezer argues. Rebbe Eliezer says, no, it's still truma. You're not allowed to be at metame. It's going to become tamei. Okay, I'll become. But you're not allowed to be at metame. Ooh, what do we learn from here? That if something is about to perish, the chiyuv of tumah is not an issue. So since we have chametz, the chametz is going to be burnt. It's Erev Pesach. Rabbi Meir says, I don't care if you metame it. You say, yeah, but it's tar. It's mamish tar. That wine was also tar. And you were metame it biyadayim in Dairaisa. You were metame it biyadayim. Why? Because soifel le'ibud. It's going to perish. It's going to tumah. Here I say exactly the same thing. And from this we have a big chiddush legabi the previous source. If you hold Reb Meir learns it from Reb Chanina's Gana Koyanim and Rabbi Akiva, at one point are you allowed to burn your chametz with tahir dika chametz? Only at 11 o'clock in the morning, because at 11 o'clock it becomes not edible anymore. There's no mitzvah, because you're not allowed to eat it. But according to this, even if you want to burn it 9 o'clock in the morning, if you know for sure that there's no kohen to eat the truma and it's going to be burnt, you would be allowed to burning it at 8 o'clock in the morning and making a tameh. So it's a gevaldige chiddush. If you say the vartis, that the reason you're not allowed to be at metame is because you can't do the mitzvah anymore. And because you can't do the mitzvah anymore, so therefore, we don't care if you make it tameh. The reason you're not allowed to make it tameh is in order to be able to eat it, but you can't eat it. So then, the heter to burn the truma tmei is only when you're not allowed to eat it anymore, 11 o'clock. But many of us burn the chametz earlier in the day. Can I burn it at 10 o'clock? No. But according to this, if I know there's no kohen in shtetl, there's nobody I could find to eat this chametz. And I know by 11 o'clock, by hook or by crook, it has to be burnt. So now there's no mitzvah to keep it clean. You're allowed to be at metame biyadayim. So you could throw it into the fire and make it tameh. That's the chiddush of Rabbi Yeshua. That's where Rabbi Meir got his halacha. That's where Rabbi Meir got his yesod. So you're allowed to be at metame biyadayim. When is the kohen going to come?
No, it's 8 o'clock in the morning.
If you know for sure, huh?
Someone might come later.
Listen, miracles can happen, but if you're living on a shtetl, there's no kohen around and it's 8 o'clock in the morning, so you know this truma is not going to be eaten, even though now it could be eaten, but I'm not a kohen, I can't eat it, or I'm not allowed to eat it, maybe health reasons, whatever it is. So in that case, he couldn't burn it according to the svara. Why? Because soifel le'ibud, it's going to be destroyed. And if it's soifel le'ibud, there's no mitzvah to keep it protected. Now, what's the idea that when soifel le'ibud, when it's going to be destroyed, there's no mitzvah to protect it? You could say it's like it's destroyed already, or you could say you're not taking it away from any mitzvah. When you're making it tameh, you're not taking away from any mitzvah. What's mitzvah? To eat it? It's going to be destroyed anyway. You can't eat it. So you could also say that once you know it's going to be destroyed, you're not taking it away from any purposeful use, which is a mitzvah use, because it's going to be destroyed. So it's like gone. You could say it's like gone, or even if it's not like gone, perhaps, even if it's not like gone, but the whole reason you're not allowed to make it tameh is in order to do a mitzvah with it. You can't do a mitzvah with it anymore because it's going to be gone. Like this truma that's flowing down, right? You know no mitzvah can be done with it. What are you going to do with it? Drink it? You can't get it. You don't have a keli tar. All that's going to happen is going to become tameh. So I don't care if you make it tameh b'yadayim. Because the idea is, since it's going to be lost and no mitzvah can be done with it, the regular mitzvah of eating it or drinking it, betahara, cannot be done. So therefore, you might say in such a case, we see from Rabbi Yeshua that what does he believe? That the mitzvah to protect it is gone, the bets are off, and you're allowed to be at metame biyadayim mamish. Why? Because the mitzvah of protecting it is gone, because it's going to be lost, and therefore, there's no way for me to do the mitzvah, and if there's no way for me to do a mitzvah, there's no purpose. Torah gave no purpose to protect it. Rebbe Lezer disagrees. Rebbe Lezer says, till the last moment, you're not allowed to be at metame. There's nothing you can do with it in terms of the mitzvah, but it's an essential mitzvah, you're not allowed to be at metame. When it gets lost, but till then, you're not allowed to be at metame. If that's the case, frag the Gemara, Hai midivreihem midvarav mibayilei. Why does Rabbi Meir say midivreihem? It should be midvarav. It's not from Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua, it's only Rabbi Yeshua, because Rabbi Lezer actually disagrees. Hachikama, what he meant was mimachloikson shel Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua lamadnu. From the argument of Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua, we learn it. Why? Because since they argue about it, and whenever Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua argue about Tahara, is the halachas like Rabbi Yeshua, so midivreihem. From their argument, we learn this, because whenever Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua argue, in these cases of Tahara and Tumah, the halacha was always like Rabbi Yehoshua. As Rashi points out, it's based on a famous story about Metzia, where Rabbi Eliezer argued about an oven, and there was a huge dispute. And Rabbi Eliezer tried to do all these miracles in order to vindicate himself. And Rabbi Yeshua is the one who said, Torah loy b'shamayim, we decide Torah right here, and we don't listen to Baskos. And at that moment was decided by the Bezdin that in Tumah and Tara, the halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua versus Rabbi Eliezer. And therefore, from both of them, since there's an argument here, so therefore I know the halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua, and therefore we're allowed to burn the Terumah Tahira with the Tmeya. If there wouldn't be an argument with Rabbi Eliezer, I might say the halacha is not like Rabbi Yeshua. Maybe he's wrong. So I can't burn the Tahira de Ketrum. But since it's Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, and when there's a machlek between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, the halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua. Therefore, midivreihem, from both of them, I could learn that you burn this Terumah. When it comes to taros, when it comes to the issues of purity and impurity, what's pure, what's impure, and how to deal with it, the halacha was established, like the majority, which was Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Eliezer was an individual, and he fought all the Chachamim, and he refused to back down. And he said, to her, it says, Achire Rabbim Lahatos. It's a whole long story in Baba Metzia, Dafnon Tess, a very famous story called Tanur Shel Achnoi, a famous oven that was called the Achnoi oven. And at that point, they decided that when it comes to Tumah and Tara, the halacha would not follow Rabbi Eliezer, but Rabbi Yeshua. That's why he says, Midivreihem Lamadno. Not only from Rabbi, of Tumah and Tara. Of Tumah and Tara.
He was putting fair in the issue of Tumah and Tahara. Why do we even mention him at all?
Oh, listen, he was the Belezer was right, but he was always mentioned. Yeah. Pirkei Avos. Yeah, no, but there you're dealing with a heretic, Mama Shaholdev. Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, he's called Rabbi Eliezer HaGadol, the great Rabbi Eliezer, the Rebbe of Rabbi Akiva. Yeah. I have also a very strong diuk that this is pshat. The Ketani, because the Mishnah continues, that Rabbi Yossi said to Rabbi Meir, you're wrong. And the Rabbi Yossi continues, Moider Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yeshua. Who's talking about Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua? The Mishnah is very strange. We mentioned Rabbi Chanina, we mentioned Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Meir speaks about Terumah, Rabbi Yossi says you're wrong, and Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua are moide. What do we see from here? That Rabbi Meir was learning his shitta from Rabbi Yeshua versus Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Yossi wanted to argue, and he said, wrong, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua are both moide, that you're not allowed to burn Terumah Tahira Tmeya. Why is he bringing Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua? Because they were the source for the shitta of Rabbi Meir. The same principle was taught by Reb Nachman in the name of Rabbi, the son of Avu. Similar to Rish Lakish in the name of Akapara. This in the Mishnah is talking about the Mishnah is talking about everything was biblical by Reb Chanina. The Tumah was biblical, and therefore you cannot learn out Reb Meir's shitta from there. Omai midivrei Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yeshua. The Devarim is Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. That's the source. In other words, Rabbi Nachman agrees with the same principle. So the Gemara says, Eisver Rabbi Nachman. But Rav questioned Rabbi Nachman. Fascinating brisa that contradicts this. Amar Rabbi Yossi said, Ein hanidoin doim l'raya. The brisa elaborates the Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi told Rabbi Meir, Ein hanidoin, your halacha is not similar to your proof. Meaning, you cannot prove your case of chametz from our teachers. Why? When our rabbis testified about burning kachim and truma in the Beis Hamikdash, the kayanim burning, al ma'id, what were they talking about? Im ala basar shenitma ba'avatum bivladatum shesoifin oisem abasar shenitma ba'avatum. Reb Chanina was speaking about meat that became tamei through a vladatum, was a shlishi, that you burn with meat that became tamei through an avatuma. You can't bring a proof from there that you're allowed to burn Terumah Tahira with Terumah Tmeya. Why? Zet tamei v'zet tamei. Over there they were both tamei. V'im ala Hashem and shenivsal b'tful yom shemadlikin oiseh b'neish b'shenitma b'tmei meis. If you want to bring a proof from Rabbi Akiva that the oil that was parceled through a tful yom, you're allowed to burn in a lamb that became tamei through contact with a person who touched the tmei meis. So the oil that was a shlishi becomes a rishon. Is that parcel? Is that tamei? The first oil that the tful yom touched was parcel. The lamp was tamei, and when you put the oil in the lamp, you're bumping it up from parcel to tamei. Af anu moedim betruma shenitmes bevlada tuma shesorfen oisim atruma shenitmes ba'avatuma. We would also agree that Yossi says that truma that was already tameh, truma that was a shlishi, you could burn with truma that was a rishon. I have no problem. If Reb Meir would say Erev Pesach, you could take truma that was a shlishi and throw it in the fire with truma that was a rishon. Even though they come in contact and the truma goes up, I'm fine. You have a good proof from Reb Chanina, you have a good proof from Reb Akiva. But how can you allow to take truma that's even a suffix truma and burn it Erev Pesach with tmeya? Shema yovu Eliyahu v'yitarena. Maybe Eliyahu Hanavi is going to come, and Eliyahu is going to come and say, you see this truma that was in doubt? It's tahor, and retroactively you will discover that you took pure truma and you burnt it with tamadika truma. Even if it's a doubt, I say you're not allowed to, because Eliyahu Hanavi could make it tahor. But what if it's mamish tahor? For sure you're not allowed to. You don't need Eliyahu Hanavi. Right now you're doing a wrong thing. So Rabbi Yossi says there's absolutely no proof from Reb Chanina and Rabbi Akiva, because they're talking about things that were tamei already, or pasul already, Rabbi Yossi says, and therefore your proof, Reb Meir, is wrong. This is how a Brisa elaborates and explains Rabbi Yossi's words, Lohi Amid. And our Mishnah, Rabbi Yossi just says 3 words. It's not a good comparison. But in the Brisa, he actually elaborates. And Rabbi Yossi finishes quoting the Brisa. The Brisa says, Hapigul va'noiser va'tamei. When you have pigul and noiser and tamei, Beishamai oimrim ein nisrofen ka'achas. Beisilal oimrim nisrofen ka'achas. Fascinating halacha. You have 3 pieces of meat. One is tamei meat. A tamei touched it, you have to burn it. One is pigul. Pigul is karbonis, that when you did that, the kohen did the avodah, he had in mind that he's going to do it in the wrong time. He's going to sprinkle the blood tomorrow. He's going to eat it in 3 days. He's going to burn the meat tomorrow. He has a machshava that disqualifies the carbon while he's doing the avodah. Noiser means you leave over the carbon after its prescribed time of eating. All 3, you're not allowed to eat. All 3 have to be burnt, but there's a difference. The first 2 are not biblically tamei. The third one was tamei. Noiser, you're not allowed to eat. You have to burn it, but it's not biblically tamei. Are you allowed to burn them together? Beis Shammai says you're not allowed to burn them together. Why? Because you're going to be metamei the first meat with the third piece of meat. You're not allowed to make it tamei. It's karbanis. You have to burn it. Either rabbis said that pigul and noiser should be tamei, but that's only a rabbinic tumah. It's a rabbinic tumah. It's not a biblical tumah. So therefore, you're not allowed to burn it together. Beis Hillel says you're allowed to burn it together. So what does Rabbi Yossi prove from here? Rabbi Yossi says, here again you see the same idea. Beis Shammai says even basar that's tamei midirabanan, you can't burn with basar that's tamei midiraisa. Even Beis Hillel, who says you're allowed to burn them together, it's because he says that pigul and noiser are tamei midirabanan. So at least it's tamei, so he says you're allowed to bump it up a notch and burn it together. But to say that you're allowed to take truma tahira and burn it Erev Pesach, there's no source for that. You can't prove it from Chanina, you can't prove it from Rabbi Akiva, you can't prove it from Beis Shammai, you can't prove it from Beis Hillel. All of them agree there has to be a tumah in order to burn it together with tahira. There has to be a tumah. What do we see from this whole brisa though? If you believe Reb Meir was proving his idea from Rabbi Yeshua, this whole brisa, Rabbi Yossi is refuting the proof from Reb Chanina's Gan HaKoyanim. Reb Meir never had a proof from Reb Chanina's Gan HaKoyanim. If Reish Lakish and Reb Nachman were right, the whole proof of Rabbi Yeshua, the whole refutation of Rabbi Yossi is completely the wrong wavelength. I'm proving something to Rabbi Yeshua who spoke about the barrel of wine flowing down, and you're telling me you can't prove it for Reb Chanina's Gan HaKoyanim? That's what the Brisa says clearly. That's what Rabbi Yossi was bothered by. Gewaldige Kasha, your whole premise is wrong. You see clearly Rabbi Yossi was refuting the source of Reb Chanina's Gan HaKoyanim. But Reb Meir didn't even learn it from him, according to you. He learned it from Rabbi Yeshua. This is what Rava asked Reb Nachman. Elam Reb Nachman says, Rabbi Yossi lav adaite. Fascinating. Rabbi Yossi did not understand what Reb Meir meant. To who suffer, he thought Reb Meir with Reb Chanina's Gan HaKoyanim kamalei. He thought Reb Chanina was the source for Reb Meir. Reb Meir said, "Midivrei hem lamadnu." He meant Reb Chanina. So Reb Yossi said, "Reb Chanina? That's not a proof. Reb Chanina was talking about something that's tamei. Reb Akiva was talking about something that's possible." Amalei, Reb Meir said, "You misunderstood me. Anamid Reb Yeshua kamina. I meant it from Rabbi Yeshua, not from Rabbi Chanina. That's what happened. This Bryce is right because Rabbi Yossi rejected him based on his assumption of what he meant. So Rabbi Meir explained to him what he meant. I didn't mean Rabbi Chanina, I meant Rabbi Yeshua. V'amalei, so Rabbi Yossi said, Afilu Rabbi Yeshua nami einehi amida. Even Rabbi Yeshua is not a source. The Hamaydi Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yeshua said if Zubif Natzma, Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yeshua both hold you burn them separately. Even Rabbi Yeshua is not a source. We'll soon see why it's not a source. That's what happened there. So therefore, the Bryce is not a contradiction. The Bryce is one stage of the argument, and then the argument continued. According to this, when the Mishnah quotes Reb Chanina's Gana Koyanim, it is connected to Pesachim, because Reb Yossi thought that was the source of Reb Meir. He thought that was the source of Reb Meir, right? That's what he thought l'chatchila, and therefore he questioned it. And then Reb Meir said that wasn't my source. My source was Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabbi Yossi argued on that, as the Gemara will continue how he argued with that. The source is Maskana is not Reb Chanina or Reb Akiva, because Rabbi Yossi refuted that, and Reb Meir said, "You're right. You misunderstood me." So the brisa that says he rejected the proof from Reb Chanina is valid based on his initial assumption of what Reb Meir meant. So Reish Lakish and Reb Nachman are both right. Reb Meir's source is Reb Yeshua, but Reb Yossi thought that his source was Reb Chanina. Well, brisa elaborated Mishnayos. So that's why the brisa was, it seemed like a slam dunk proof that Reb Meir was not learning it from Rabbi Yeshua, he was learning it from Chanina, because that's what Rabbi Yossi was rejecting. He says that was the initial assumption. So Reb Meir clarified, no, it was not Reb Chanina, it was Rabbi Yeshua. I have a very good proof. Rabbi Yossi said, no, even Rabbi Yeshua doesn't hold like this. The story with the barrel of wine is completely not to be connected to the story of Terumah on Erev Pesach, as the Gemara will go on to discuss. Understood? Huh? What do you love? What did you love?
Because several times.
Chaza the Gemara, please. Chaza the Gemara, very important. Huh? Sorry, Chazara. Huh?
A lot of it I don't understand. But then as an understanding comes in and I see the relationship and I connect to it. When do I know when I connect to it?
You have to learn that.
Yeah. Gewaldig, pleasure to have you. Huh?
You say Shem Yavel Liyah when?
Shema Yavel Eliyahu when Mashiach comes.
But that's already too late.
You're right. Eliyahu will come whenever he comes. But when he comes,
That's already after the hour.
yeah, it could be 2,000 years later. Could be 2,000 years later. But retroactively it means that 2,000 years ago, you burnt Tahir de Terumah. It gives you a perspective, even though 2,000 years passed and a lot of water came under the bridge. But it means retroactively. Exactly.
It means something.
It means something because if it's a spiritual truth, if it's a divine truth, it could be a small that you threw a challah into, you made it tameh, big deal. But Eliyahu was going to show that you took Terumah Tahira and you made it tameh.
And as a result, a new nebula.
And as a result, yeah, the black hole.
You never know what's
Destroy
happening.
it.
Yeah, you know.
No, in other words, it's a serious thing. It's a serious thing. You took Terumah that was Tahir and you made it tameh, be a dayim. Rabbi Yossi says, how do you do such a thing? You say, well, I don't know anyway. Well, you don't know. But Eliyahu knows, he may tell you.
I hope when Eliyahu will come, so they will
that's gonna be
they'll make a
suffering.
device that, like we see positive charge, negative charge, we can see Terumah Tahara. So you touch something, and it's Terumah.
So Rabbi Yossi says, for sure, you can't take mamash Tahir and destroy and make it tameh. Even tluya, even if it's a suffix, you're not allowed to Shema Yavi Eliyahu. But for sure, not for sure, tameh.
Right.
Really, sure.
What was that introduction I heard that the Rambam said that you have to learn it?
The Rambam says, even if you repeat my introduction 1,000 times, it's not enough. He said until it becomes so fluent, like you, like we know Ashrei, like you say Ashrei. Tatzlocha. It says in Teres Koyanim, Yavoyu Tahirim, V'yisasku b'Tahirim, right? Let the pure ones come and start with the pure. That's why they start teaching children Parsha of Karbonis, Vayikra. Yavoyu Tahirim, V'yisasku b'Tahirim. The Medrash says, let the pure ones come and immerse themselves in purity. But it has to be taught in a very organized way, very organized. Pictures, clear, everything has to have its place. You have to see the whole picture, very important.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.